experience build those listeners. What is digital fatigue? What are we talking about? And just to be clear, and this is now really the common definition. It's a type of mental exhaustion that is resulting from too much time spent on screens, right? Also called technology fatigue or Zoom fatigue. I think everybody that's listening, Khalil, is probably nodding their head and can get what we're talking about. But
Yeah.
if you haven't heard the term before, you'll certainly recognize some of the symptoms, which can include feeling like work and free time are not separated in any meaningful way. Um,
Yeah.
you can be low motivation and morale. When I hit Dan Griffin up for that, he goes, "What are you talking about? I'm motivated all day long." And I go, "Well, how about you know, my 2 college-age daughters that when they're home, they're dead staring their phones, and I can't get them to go outside or to go over to a friend's house or to I think people can realize that shows up in other areas of our lives. The physical signs, decreased energy, sleep disorders, I've experienced those, increased anxiety of some kind, even including panic attacks, and chest pains have even been reported. So that's what when we talk about digital fatigue, I think it's really that mental exhaustion that comes because they're really screens used to mean work and personal was personal, and it's all blending together, and
Yeah.
that's confusing, certainly to the body, if not the mind.
Which of all the screens and apps that you use, which one's the most draining for you?
The bathroom scale. No, you know what? It is, if my wife were here, she'd be like, "Well, it should be." I think it's the one you can't put down or turn away from. And I'm sure you could tell me some data about endorphins that are released or why we
Right.
do that, but it is just, um, I the one I notice the most, Khalil, is particularly if I'm out to dinner or something with my wife, or even if I just go home. When I'm talking to somebody and they just can't put this device down, and they just don't. I guess it really is. That's a form of anxiety for me when I'm like, "You're not even listening to me." "No, no, I am listening. I just got buzzed," right? We can't seem to create our own separation. So I think as we go into 2025 now, I think this is gonna be a thing I'm gonna try and tackle and improve if it's just calling out the people I work with or care about or trying to create a workspace where we're using those devices in a way that's and that we'll talk about that as this discussion goes on about maybe some things we can do to reduce the stress. But I would say probably the handheld one is the one that gets me.
The
What about
handheld.
you? Is there one for
But is
you?
there a specific app on your phone that
Um,
really, and I think we should define draining, because draining, I mean, it's not necessarily that it's um, really hard to do, like you hate staring at your email, for example. It's more so that like it consumes you more than others, and then it drains you and causes the fatigue overall. So it could still be your email if you're addicted to
well,
email,
so it
but
could. And by the way, everybody at different stages of life. So you've got a daughter, Mila. She's 3 right now or 4? Or how
Mhm.
old is she?
Yep.
Do you
And
remember
we
when the baby monitor was probably the most stressful screen in your life? You're like, "Is
talk to
she
my wife, it still is.
is she" exactly. Um, yeah, so
I would
I
say for me, Twitter is the one. And what's hard is there's things that are entertaining on there for me, but I really use it as more of a knowledge tool. I'm in communities on Twitter. I follow conversations about work, um, and I'm always learning from it. And then I just find myself checking it multiple times a day, even when I know I shouldn't. Um, and then it causes this like fatigue of seeing my screen and scrolling a feed, so that whenever I get to my email, I'm exhausted getting through my email. I'm exhausted getting through this, and then but it's also, I find the alternatives are, I find myself watching TV a lot, love sports. I could sit down and watch, both of the basketball games that are prime time each night. So I think a really good book for this, Chris, that I've read 3 or 4 times, and it has had an impact on me, I will say, is called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And
mm,
it's a fantastic book.
The
And he
Ruthless
talks about,
Elimination of Hurry. I love that
yeah,
title.
Oh, it's a phenomenal book. Great read this winter if anyone's cozy in a cabin. But it's a really easy read too. And
Can we
one of the
put
things he
that in the
talks about
show
there,
notes, Khalil? I would love
we will put that in the show notes for our listeners. So basically, he talks about technology as one of the sections in the book. He talks about how in, I want to say it was 1960s, somewhere around there, Congress met because they were worried about the rapid pace of technology. The microwave was coming out and becoming a staple in the modern American household. And they were worried about what technology was going to do to life for people. They thought that in 20 years, people would be working 40% of the time that they had been at that time because
well,
of
I
the
remember
advancements in technology.
IBM was an early mover on computers back I remember, in the
Yeah.
house I grew up in when I was little, and that I forget, maybe it was Gates that said it, maybe it was, the head of IBM at the time, but they talked about you can do a full week's work in 35% of the time. It was the device that was gonna make us all happier and a better, more, improved wellness. We didn't use the word wellness back then, but it was a way because we were just gonna be that much more efficient. And do you think they knew back then, Khalil, what really was gonna happen? That these devices would
They
s
probably did. It was a grand master plan to get everybody
Yeah.
staring at blue light 18 hours of the day. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if they knew, but the reality is, it didn't make us more leisurely.
Can I claim
It only
reparations for something like that and get a life back that
hopefully.
seems to have run amok? Well,
Yeah, you might be able to. No, the reality is though, with technology, it's only advancing at an even more rapid pace, right? And technology is not going to help you use like less technology. It has to go back to just basic human boundaries that you set to limit yourself from technology.
so
And
that's
so I
yeah.
think for me, something that I've done and that he even talks about in this book is one, putting my phone in the car inside of the center console, whatever you want to call it, and just not even trying to talk on the phone, not trying to text on the phone, not trying to use maps on the phone.
Yeah.
Sometimes is hard, but as long as you're doing the normal commute, you're fine. Um, and just keeping it there, and try going in the car and not listening to music or radio, and not have the phone. Just drive. And having those breakups in your day will allow you to think clearly. It's like you're on an IV drip of just constant simulation and noise,
Yeah.
even in the car, right? Even in the shower. I listen to music all the time in the shower,
Yeah.
but just limiting that noise can really help. And then you can put color filters on your phone where it basically makes it grayscale. So you're a black and white phone, which makes it less appealing to go and look at your phone and to,
Yes.
uh, look at social media and apps and stuff like that. And then a huge one for me, and I'm in a two-story house. I leave my phone downstairs at night. It's it's plugged in the kitchen. I leave it there. When I go up, the phone doesn't come with me. And so setting some of those boundaries in books like Atomic
I love
Habits
that.
talk about triggers and environment and all that kind of stuff. But I think those are some basic ones. But it really does start with our phone. It's only harder when you're on your phone as much as anybody, but then you work from a screen full time if that's what your job is. And then when you go home, you watch a movie with your spouse. And then, I mean, you really haven't escaped a screen for more than 10 minutes a day when you were, even when you're in the bathroom, you're on your screen.